Joo, me ollaan Futucast. Taas yksi jakso. Isakin täällä äänessä. Edessä istuu William von der Baalen jälleen kerran.
Täällä mä istun, moi.
Jälleen kerran. Meillä on aika jännä vieras tällä kertaa. Bruce Oreck, Yhdysvaltain entinen Suomen suurlähettiläs.
Ja konepäin Brunon uusi omistaja.
Joo, niin sillä on ollut tämä iso projekti. Puhutaan paljon siitäkin tässä jaksossa. Mutta siis Bruce on tosi hyvä ja se oli mun edellisessä podcastissa silloin, kun mä tämmöisessä harrastusmielessä tein podcastia Hankkenilla yliopistolla. Niin tuli sinne vieraaksi ja yksi pointti. Tähän on englanniksi tämä jakso. Should we change to English to make the transition a little bit easier?
Let's do it. We probably lost all American or English speaking listeners at this point already, but well, that's fine.
And all the Finnish people are like, no, I was really looking forward to this.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
we're sorry.
No,
this will not be good for anyone.
Finnish.
Yeah. How long has he been here? Like 12 years?
Maybe 12 years. Yeah.
Well,
I know he probably knows how to say like kalja and bisse and sauna and perkele. That's probably what he knows how to say.
Well, that's pretty much it.
Yeah, that's all you need.
Yeah, you got pretty far with that.
I think so. But we talked a lot about Finland, basically.
And being Finnish.
And we got like a bit of an outsider perspective to what it's like to be Finnish and what the future. I mean, there's a lot of parallels with this episode and the Karhinen episode. Yeah. In a sense. Yeah. We talked about a lot of the same things, but you always get a different perspective from Bruce, and he's such an entertaining speaker.
Exactly, he's very eloquent, and I think he's really been analyzing also Finland and being Finnish. So actually, it's not just this.
You can really tell that he likes this place. There's no other reason for him to be in Finland anymore other than him actually enjoying and wanting to be here, wanting to help, and wanting to. Yeah.
Exactly. Right. So hey, do let us know if you want us to make any more episodes in English, and do still follow us at Futucast, #Futucast on all social medias, and rate and review and subscribe and all this. So really thankful for that, and let us know.
Yeah, please let us know. And go follow us on all the podcast apps. One main reason for that is, well, you get the episodes on demand, but then also we also have our first season there, which is packed with great episodes, great guests, and
all in Finnish though.
All in Finnish.
Yeah. All right.
Let's do it. Let's go to the episode.
Suuri kiitos meidän pääyhteistyökumppaneille, jotka tällä Futucastin kakkoskaudella on BMW i3, joka on BMWn täyssähköauto, sekä Pivolle, joka on kaikkien suomalaisten maksusovellus. Käykää tutustumassa tarkemmin ja kertokaa meille, että ootteko te jo kokeillut. Yeah.
We are live.
Indeed.
From our Kalastama studio. This is Futucast. My name is Isakin and this is William von der Baalen. And for those of you who are wondering, thinking this is not Finnish, this is not Futucast. Yes, it is. You're right about the first one, but you're wrong about the second one. This is Futucast, second season episode. What episode is this going to be, William?
9, but I don't know when it's going to be published or if it's going to be published. Let's see.
If it's going to be. Who do we have as our guest this time, William?
It's Mr. Bruce Oreck. So a warm welcome to the podcast. Nice to have you here.
Good morning. Or depending on what time of day this airs, good afternoon or good evening.
Or good night.
Or good night. Right.
Yeah. So, people know you. Most people know you as the former ambassador for this country.
No, actually the former ambassador for the United States
to Finland. Yeah. That's right. What
People somehow get that confused. They don't know who I was working for. So who's that guy?
Your accent tells it.
Yeah.
It gives it off.
A little.
And what do you do now? Like last time I saw you a few years ago, we did a podcast. And then you had a suit on. Now you don't. What happened?
I had to sell the suit now that I no longer have a job. Had to give that up. No, I do a lot of different things. I teach at Aalto in the business school a couple months of the year. I do also invest in startups and work in that area in entrepreneurship. And I also am a real estate guy, so I do real estate.
Okay, so that's a lot.
Well, if you don't sleep, you can get a lot done, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I remember we were talking about before we came here, like, you slept for like 3 hours last night, and you managed with quite a...
Yeah, I sleep 3 to 4. 3.5 is sort of the norm.
Is there really enough?
How the hell would I know?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm still alive. I'm
Yeah.
sure that will come to an end, but the living part, that is. But I seem to do all right. The magic for me is I'm good with 3 to 3.5 at night, and if I can get a 15-minute power nap in the afternoon, I'm okay.
Yeah.
If I don't, I get sleepy. But if I literally a 15-minute power nap, and I'm good.
Are you one of those who can power nap anywhere?
Yeah. In fact, I'll probably fall asleep in the middle of this podcast.
Yeah, you will. Yeah.
I don't think anyone's going to notice.
That's right. They won't. They're already asleep.
Right.
That's right. This is verbal chloroform for your listeners.
It is a new thing. What do you teach?
In the business school, it's in the Department of Marketing. I teach storytelling. So storytelling is a less fancy way to say marketing.
Yeah.
And because despite what everybody in Finland still seems to think, it's not the product, it's the story. It is always the story. Now, you need to have something behind the story, but the best thing in the world without a story is just an object. And an object today in a global economy where you're bombarded constantly 24 hours a day with hundreds of thousands of listening choices. Why is this pen I'm holding up any different than anything else? Just because it's a pen, it's got to have a story.
Right.
That's
Listen
the
to the
story.
old philosophers, like, you can't understand an object as itself. It needs some interpretation. A very, very high-flying way of explaining the same thing, but I mean, that's the same logic. Like, you can't understand an object as itself. Like, it has to have something.
Right. Everything needs
connected to it.
context. We need
Everything
the
needs
human
context.
context. And if you think about how we learn, your parents read children stories. They don't read them spreadsheets. They don't give them spec sheets. They don't tell them, hey, let me tell you how come this is the best remote control in the world. No. That's not, everything. And since the dawn of time, we learn with stories, and if you want to understand why that works, you have to go back to the animal kingdom. Look how animals teach their offspring. Right? There's a certain amount of knowledge that's imprinted in your DNA. That beyond that, it's do what I'm doing. Listen to my story. Whether it's the mother bear teaching its cubs or something else, it's all about story. Now, when you get to the reptiles, there's not a lot of teaching, but that's why the reptilian brain, right? When you get to the higher level, the mammals and such, there's behavioral teaching.
And they also eat their kids, which is not a good sign. I don't want to generalize reptiles. Yeah.
Okay. I thought maybe you were talking about your neighbors. I don't know.
Does the story need to be true?
Yes and no.
Good question.
You have to understand what truth means in storytelling. If you tell someone a fairy tale, Hansel and Gretel or whatever it is, right? Was there a witch in the woods? No. But is the story true? Yes. Truth depends on the context of what you're trying to teach. Does it hold together? Does it make sense in and of itself? So, for example, let's put it in a modern context. Look at Star Wars. Now, not every one of the Star Wars films has been a success, but the ones that have been most successful tell a good story. There's a good moral to the story. There's a learning. There's a lessoning, right? A lesson in it. Is there any truth to it? Oh, hell no. Those guys are a bunch of actors on a screen with a green screen and waving around broomsticks. And then some computer jock turns it into the world somewhere far, far away with the lightsabers. But the story holds together because it's true. It makes sense in its framework. So it doesn't have to be about, this is the bluest pen in the world or this cures cancer. Now we know truth in the sense of if someone tells you a story and it doesn't hold together, it doesn't feel right, the movie bombs, the book doesn't sell, or the product doesn't sell because, it comes across as BS. So truth is, yes, it has to be true, but not in the literal sense.
There's an evolutionary psychologist from America who makes a distinction between epistemic truths and then metaphorical truths.
Right.
It's Eric Weinstein is called, and it's very interesting. Like a metaphorical truth is, as you said, like it's a truth where the factual components of the statement might not be necessarily true. Like let's say you have you're a caveman and you imagine like there's a ghost behind that bush. Believing that there's a ghost behind the bush who's probably going to eat you or kill you is better for your survival, better for the long-term blah, blah, blah,
right.
than not believing that. So there's a metaphorical truth within the falsehood
right.
of the statement.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What are some examples of good stories? Are there any Finnish companies doing this yet? Who are actually good at it?
I think there are a lot of Finnish companies that are doing the story well.
Yeah.
And story is a little more complicated. So let's focus on someone who doesn't have, let's say, a lot of story in their story. Let's take Kone elevator, right? People aren't there going out and selling elevators based on story. You know, let me tell you the story about Bob, Heikki, who went up and down the elevator. What a great story. But they do have sort of the logical extension of that, and they realize that to sell an elevator, yes, it has to be good, it has to be safe, it has to be fast, and all that sort of thing. But it has to have extraordinary service. It doesn't do you any good if it breaks and nobody can get there to fix it, or nobody's thinking ahead to keep it from breaking down. And so their customer experience, how they care for their customer, is their story, right? And they build their story around that aspect of their business. Again, it doesn't have lightsabers and make-believe and that kind of stuff, but that's where their story is. It's in a different phase of their business. And that's partly also how they execute on that.
Yeah.
And you've been to a restaurant in Helsinki, and it seems as almost the waiter or the waitress has been trained not to make eye contact, right? Yeah. You're waving your arms like you're trying to land a 747, and all you're trying to do is get them to give you a menu, or can I have another beer, right? And it's amazing, right? Your restaurant can be empty. You're right there in their line of sight, and they can look around and just not see you. Yeah. Who trained those guys? They're hiring people with some kind of impairment. That's part of the customer. The customer experience is part of this whole story thing.
Right. Yeah. I don't know why do you think that is?
Yeah. Why are we so bad at that?
Comparatively,
at least.
It is. First of all, I want to be clear that this is not a matter of defective DNA. Right? There's nothing about this that Finland couldn't be the best at if it wanted to be. And there certainly are a lot of Finnish businesses that get it and do an extraordinarily great job. We do a world-class job. But Finland came of age economically at a time when making stuff really well was the most important thing. You didn't sell the same way. The story wasn't as important in that moment of time. The world was clamoring for quality stuff. And so a lot of the business practices of the last century, Finland adopted those. And it's interesting because Finland starts as a storyteller, right? Finland is a country that is based on storytellers, architects, poets, musicians, writers. You have a national epic, the Kalevala. You are a nation of storytellers. That's how Finland came into being. And then as it shifted into this sort of world of stuff, this engineered stuff, the focus became on the stuff. Well, the focus has moved from the stuff back to the story because everybody makes stuff. 7 billion people, everyone's making stuff. And Finland's just sort of got stuck in that mindset of, if I build a really good thing, people will find me. And they won't.
Yeah, of covering the basics, which no one should. I mean, that's very important. Covering the basics, but that's not enough, in a sense. You can't just like.
Of course not.
Do the bare minimum and then expect that to
look at the products that we're sitting here in this studio, and you look around at the products. I see computers, laptops that are not made in Finland. I see microphones that are not made in Finland. The fact of the matter is, as I look around here, I don't see a single thing in this room that's made in Finland. right?
Yeah.
Now that's
Me.
huh? You, right? And Finland makes a lot of good stuff, and a lot of it is technology that is, it's connected to IT or something. But in terms of physical products,
Right.
You're 5.5 million people competing in a world of 7.5 billion people. It's very hard to compete just on stuff.
Yeah.
Because somebody can make it cheaper, somebody can make it faster. You put 10 engineers on it, someone can put 1,000 engineers on it. But the ability to tell the story, the ability to relate, right? That succeeds or falls based on the quality of a single person, the storyteller.
Yeah.
That can be an organization, but that gives you a huge competitive advantage.
Right.
Yeah. Do you think we'll fix it automatically with newer generations that grow up with these kind of companies, these kind of products, see them all day?
I think it's being fixed now. It's a slower start than I'd like to see, but I think that the educational system has woken up to the fact that the process has to change. This is a skill that you instill in kids when they're very young, and then you keep training all of your life. You never get done. It's nobody. If you're a skier or a hockey player or a violinist, no one ever says, "I'm done. I don't have to practice anymore. I got it."
Right.
No, you're always skilling up. And so this is not a skill that you arrive and you say, okay, I'm done. No, it's a practice. You always do it. And Finland's changing. The biggest challenge for Finland is not its ability to do what it sets its mind to do. Finland's very good at that. If you say, okay, we're going to have the best schools or the cleanest water or the cleanest air, you're very good at setting goals and then sticking with them. So the challenge is, one, making this a goal that's really a national imperative. But the other is speed.
Yeah.
The world is going incredibly fast, and you don't have the luxury of saying, oh, it's changing, and in 10 years, hell, the smartphone is 10 years old. Look what's happened to the world in the 10 years of the smartphone. Do you really think you can lose another 10 years? How much more out of step can one be in another 10 years? And I'm not saying that Finland's entirely out of step, but clearly we see things where Finland has missed opportunities. If you look at Sweden, who's since the financial crisis in 2008, I guess, their economy has been growing robustly, and Finland's economy is effectively flat.
Yeah.
Right? Now, that's next door.
Yeah.
Right? What's going on? What's going on is the pieces that are missing is the marketing piece, the storytelling piece, and this sense of urgency.
If you ask the true things, it's a currency, but yeah. But we spoke with
Because other people with the euro are doing just fine.
exactly
Right.
That's my point.
Germany's not suffering, right?
We spoke with Reijo Karhinen last week, also the former head of OP, and we spoke about the stagnation also of Finland. Basically we were doing fine up until like 2006, 2007, before the economic crisis, but after that it's been flat, and we discussed that, are we kind of too satisfied with what we've accomplished, after the war, pulled ourselves up from being a small country, from being a poor country, and we're up with the big boys now.
Yeah, let's
now
not.
we're starting to lose
Don't
it.
even have to put down that story. I mean, I'm not saying
Yeah.
you were doing that, but that's an incredible miracle story.
Yeah.
Right, but keep in mind what happened. The signal of the financial crisis in 2008, there have always been financial crises.
Yeah.
This is not new news. There'll be another one. They've been in the past.
Right.
Usually, though, the financial crisis is a symptom of a large-scale fundamental shift that nobody saw coming, and they should have. Right? And anybody looking back at 2008, anybody today could look back and say, well, of course it ended as in tears. That was complete, it was a really bad idea in all respects, how we got there. But whether it's any of the historic boom and bust or, overinflation on some overinvestment in certain areas, they usually signal a fundamental change. The problem is that people don't like fundamental changes. I'm good at doing what I'm doing. Don't change. Let's just keep on doing what I'm doing. And so the problem post-2008, this isn't about Finns feeling comfortable because they have a social safety net. You had the medical system and the education system was the same in 2008 as it is today, yet the circumstances are different. It is the circumstances that have changed. The question is, are you changing to fit the circumstances? And this is, effectively, it's the Nokia story, right? Nokia had the technology. Nokia certainly had the opportunity, but they were, hey, we're doing it our way and it's working, let's not rock the boat. And that's not alone. I'm not picking on Nokia. Kodak is a good example. They invented the digital camera, and yet they got caught flat by digital photography.
Yeah.
They had a 30-year lead. They invented it 30 years before it took off. They could have been 30 years building up this incredible patent library and controlling the market. Instead, no, we do film. Film's good. This thing is. So you've had this shift. These shifts are going to be more radical. They're going to be faster. They're going to be more disruptive. And any economy, any nation that doesn't understand that there's been a fundamental change in the pattern is going to get hurt. It has nothing to do with Finns being, because you're Finnish, it has nothing to do with some other limitation. It has to do with a mindset or a governmental leadership. Somebody says, oh, we can just go at the same old pace, and you can't. It just, things have changed, and you got to be different. And nothing wishing that won't change it, right? You can't wish it away. It just is the way it is.
You're doing something for this right now. You have a big project going on in Helsinki. Well, actually, let's go back one step before. You're still in Helsinki.
I am in Helsinki.
Why?
I just love salmiakki. That's probably not true. I don't mind it, but that's not why I stay. Having now been, I'm sure people are thinking, oh my God, why don't we send that bastard home now? Having been sort of critical, I think Finland is one of the best places in the world to be.
I agree.
I think the people are wonderful and then they're extraordinary. I think the country is beautiful. It's clean. It's safe. You have proximity very close to nature everywhere. And I think it's a land of fabulous opportunity, and it's a great place to live. So how can I be so sort of critical on the one hand and positive on the other? The reason I stay is because I see this moment of opportunity there. I'm hoping, I'm pushing, I'm agitating, I'm provoking, I hope, in some ways, the shaking off of the old ways and the quick adaptation of the new ways. And when you see it over and over again, once Finns say, "Oh, I get it. There's a new path," right? They're out there and they lead. It's great. You see it over and over again. The problem right now is you got too many people holding on to the past with their fists clenched, and when that falls away, this will be a very exciting place to be. It is an exciting place to be now, but it's going to be really exciting, and I think there's a lot of opportunity. So I'm a big fan. I'm a big supporter. I stay here because I choose to stay here, and fortunately, so far, the Finnish government has not chosen to ask me to leave. So
wonderful to hear. I mean, and yes, I agree with that. I mean, a true friend always gives their best friends shit about them not being successful, or I mean, good at meeting their potential.
Yeah, and and I want to be clear about this. I am not. It is not my place. I'm nobody's mother, right? I'm not or father here, and I'm not. I have no corner on the truth or what's right or what's wrong. I look at opportunities, and I tend to look further down the road. I've always done well by being sort of either looking farther down the road or being something of a contrarian.
Yeah.
And what I find so both interesting and aggravating is when I see Finland putting the problem that Finland is confronting is almost universally problems that Finland has put in front of itself. It's not a situation where the EU has said do something, or there's some law of physics that's slowing you down. It's a stupid law that's out of date, or a rule, or whether it's tax or law, labor law, or bankruptcy or finance laws. There are laws that are out of date, that are self-imposed, and they're not going to fix themselves. This is a question of the government having to fix it. And the people, this is a democracy, people are going to also have to remember that this isn't about, well, the government has to do something. No, you have to do something. That's what a democracy is about. So if you want a democracy, then you've got to act as a democracy. You've got to have the people taking things into their own hand and causing government to react, because governments are just notoriously bad about leading.
That's right. True. I'm feeling quite positive though at the moment. We've done a lot of these podcasts now, past 6-7 weeks or so, and been talking a lot also to entrepreneurs and people doing a lot of things, and it seems like there's this change agenda, at least among these people, going on at the moment. People are starting to realize that, hey, we actually have to do something. We're falling behind. We're going to fall behind even more. And it seems like we're waking up to this slowly. It might just be this little bubble that we're seeing, but at least there's change agents out there at the moment. And it feels good.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm an optimist. I'm not a pessimist. And so I see a lot of change, but I was born and raised in New York City, and there's an expression called the New York Minute. And the New York Minute means that where everywhere else it takes 60 seconds, in New York it takes 15 seconds. And so that sense of urgency, that sense of speed is what I'm after. It's not that change isn't happening, but I believe that one of the largest challenges for companies around the globe, for governments around the globe, is the fact that they don't get this change in velocity. They don't understand that things are going much faster, and if you're not going at least that fast, you're falling behind.
And yet it's the slowest that it's probably ever going to go from here.
I don't make predictions about how foolish humans can be, or governments. But again, this gets back to leadership occurring at the entrepreneurial level. Even in the U.S., there's honestly very little leadership in government. What you get is governments reacting to change that's being forced into the system by inventors and creators and entrepreneurs. Let's take an easy example with Uber. The governments didn't say, hey, I have an idea, let's change the whole regime that taxi cabs work under. No, they didn't. Uber came about, and it took government years to kind of figure out, what do we do about it? Are we for it? Are we against it? How do we regulate it? What do we, And they still haven't gotten it right. And then you get governments that believe they can legislate away the future. In Germany, let's ban Uber to protect the taxi cab drivers. And why don't you just ban cell phones, right? And of course, not only is that foolish, right? It's incredibly stupid. I'm going to legislate away the future, but in classic governmental fashion, they don't even know who the real target is, right? They think Uber is their problem, and it's not. They can ban Uber; it's not going to stop the real problem. Their real target is Google. Why? Because Google's leading in autonomous automobiles. There's no question that every single cab driver out there is basically going to go away. This is the invention of the automobile in the day of the horse-drawn buggy. And it's, you can say we're going to mandate that everybody keep a horse, but that doesn't change anything. And so here you got the government of Germany is going nuts over Uber. They completely missed the real challenge. What they should have been doing is saying we're going to put into effect training for our cab drivers to give them a different set of skills or something, instead of believing they could protect those jobs by banning Uber. Stupid.
Yeah.
You were in the news this past
Really? That's a surprise.
You have a big project going on in Helsinki. Did you finally get Konepäin Bruno to yourself?
To myself. So
it's your living room now.
And what you're talking
TV
about
and a couch.
is the Konepäin project out in Vallela. We have now a binding contract with VR, and we expect to close on the transaction, on the purchase, by the end of the year. There are a zillion hurdles. It's a very complicated project. You've got massive buildings that are protected under the antiquities rules. You have a half a century, frankly, of deferred maintenance, things that should have been fixed years ago that haven't been, and so now, what was a small problem is a big problem. People don't understand how large that is. If you took all of the skylights, this building has these giant skylights from 1903, lots of natural light, but if you put all of the skylights end to end, it would stretch for 1.7 kilometers.
Whoa.
It's, and you have all of that, you have all of those cost, you have the engineering, you have to deal with all of the process. And so we are step by step trying to resolve each and every one of those issues, and we think we will get there. But one of the big challenges is all of that takes money, all of that takes banks. And for banks, this presents an interesting challenge because banks are very good at looking backwards because they have the past to relate. We know that this kind of project worked, therefore we'll lend money on that kind of project. But they're not so good at looking forward into a different future where the traditional real estate project no longer works and you have to do something altogether different. And then that doesn't mean, that's not because they're not smart. They are smart. It's just that the nature of their business is they have to protect their capital. They're not trying to make loans they're not going to get repaid, and therefore they have a large measure of conservative thinking. And for a bank to take a risk, it's a challenge for them. And so this is an entirely different approach to retail, a different approach to food, to how real estate is supposed to operate.
What the
what is the
big
main-
idea is going to be?
We're going to put a big Bauhaus there. No, we're not going to put a Bauhaus. That was,
Yes!
yeah, big box store. All right, so
New couches.
right? So here's the simple comprehension, and here's again a good example of change and story and such. 25 years ago, even that close, 20 years ago, objects were the thing. Objects were rare and precious. So if you went to the store and you saw, 15 different brands of running shoes or purses or, chairs or whatever it was, you'd look and you'd make a choice from that selection. You'd go, my God, I've never seen so many chairs in one store before, so many purses. Well, the internet has changed all that, and Amazon has changed all that. With a click of the button, you can see every single object on the planet, literally, and order it. And in most places where Amazon is, you have it in a day or two or three, so that the thing is no longer important. It's not that people don't buy them, but they don't have to go to a shopping mall or a department store to go look at a thing or to buy the thing, which retail was dependent upon that. They needed to get a high price. They needed to get the full retail. They pay a lot of rent. They have to pay, storekeepers and all that kind of stuff, shopkeepers. And that's all changed. In the U.S., as an example, a tremendous number of shopping malls, we invented the shopping mall in the U.S., a tremendous number of shopping malls have already gone out of business. And those that remain are the best, the ones that are the strongest. And yet a recent report says that about 40% of the remaining shopping malls will themselves go out of business within the next 5 years. Go out of business, gone. So retail hasn't changed entirely, but people still buy stuff. People still want things. They just want something different. What they want is an experience.
Yeah.
And so what Konepaja is about is to change these old buildings and reinvent them in a way where what we're delivering is an experience, if you will. And simply stated, we want to be the living room for that part of Helsinki, for that part of town. We want to be the place where people can go and hang and eat food that they can't get someplace else. No chain stores, no chain restaurants. They can find, if they want to buy an object, they can find something that's curated, that someone's chosen it specifically, as opposed to, you go to any one of these stores that you can find in every shopping mall. It's all got the same inventory. Yeah. It's all the same stuff.
The same triangle sandwich.
You're right. So no chain stores, no chain restaurants, it's all about something that's unique, and the experience is different. It's not a mall. It doesn't feel like a mall. It's not designed to be. It's the idea is to increase the amount of time people can stay, and sit around and hang out. And whether there's some co-working space with that, there's a lot of different components. And you see this around the world. I just to get off this run-on sentence. A good example, not the only, but a good example is in Lisbon, where Time Out magazine decided as an experiment a couple of years ago, could they go from writing about experiences to creating one? And they took over this large space, invited in all these chefs to come in and create unique food stuff. And it's this big sort of food hall. It's not a kauppahalli. You're not buying raw fish and raw meat. It's all prepared food. And it is now the #1 tourist attraction in Lisbon. Millions and millions of visitors go there every day, or over the year, rather. not every day, over the course of a year.
That'd be crazy.
And it's crazy.
Long lines.
Yeah, long lines. Not every day, but over the course of a year. But the point of the matter is that, and this is, you see it in New York, in London, it's all over there. Literally, this is where it's going. People are going to have unique experiences with, food and retail and how they stay, where they sit, how they experience it. And that's what the Konipai is about. It's not a mall. It's entirely different than a mall. In fact, that every time they build a mall and open a mall, that's good for Konipai because it means it's one more place where someone else hasn't gotten the fact that the world has changed.
How are you going to source companies and concepts? Are you going to build them yourselves, or have entrepreneurs build something specific for you? Or
entrepreneurs. This is about letting the entrepreneurs come in and run the show.
It's more about the culture of.
It's right. It's exactly. It's about the culture. It's sort of creating a community. You say, okay, come in and do it. Yeah. If you go to Tallinn, where they have a small scale of this, they took an area along the waterfront, and part of it was redeveloped and sort of from the bottom up by entrepreneurs, and part of it was from the city and the state focused on it. And you can tell immediately when you go to the city-run thing, it's just blah. It's it's people there, but it's boring. You would never want to go back. It's just sort of a thing. And the one that's been developed by the entrepreneurs it's hip, it's cool, it's got energy, it's got creative juice, and things come and go. Things work, things don't work. But so our job in Konipai is not to be the inventor, but rather to create the space for the inventors to come in.
And what is the time frame? When do you expect everything?
We'd be open now, but for me being here for this podcast.
Right.
Hey, we're sorry, Finland.
Yeah, really, this is your fault. Yeah. No,
we're not going to let you go just yet. No,
exactly. No. Yeah, we hope to be. It's really large, and so there are lots of stages, but we're sort of shooting for spring of 2020 to open
up.
The
first stage.
Yeah.
Wow.
Cool.
Yeah. Well,
that's pretty soon.
That is pretty soon. Yeah. Surprisingly soon, considering all the. I mean, you already outlined some of the problems and.
The world is. I know that the city has been very supportive, and the various agencies have been very supportive, and we're not asking anybody to do anything that doesn't protect the public health and safety and all that sort of stuff. But I think what we've been so far seeing is that the various bureaucracies and agencies that we have to deal with see this as an opportunity to kind of set a new pace for things, that they realize that times are changing and this is different enough. Plus, I'm an outsider, and so sometimes it's, I can be a little more forward-leaning.
Which is really good. Yeah. I mean, I think Helsinki might be different, but there's this idea of I think some Finns still feel like independence means isolation from all outside influence, which is definitely shouldn't. That's definitely not what it means. So it's a very fresh breath of air to have like an outsider in any case.
And the man sleeps 3 hours. So
yeah, so I guess we shouldn't trust your your delirious opinion.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Okay, so that's one. We're going to ask you how you see Helsinki in the next 5-10 years. So this is obviously one part of it, but what else? What do you think is going to happen to our capital?
Well,
where are the winds blowing?
The winds are blowing. So the world has again changed. 100 years ago, 7 or 8 people out of 10 lived in the countryside. Today, 7 or 8 people live in cities, and that number is accelerating. Every single day around the globe, 180,000 people move from the countryside to a city. 180,000 people every single day. This isn't a year, this is a day.
Yeah, it's crazy.
On a global scale. This is the age, of the mega city. They're going to be gigantic super cities, and then they're going to be smaller cities, but it's all urban. The economy is urban. And look, I'm nothing against the countryside. I love going to the countryside, but if you took the economic contribution of the entire countryside and you compare that to the contribution of the cities, the cities are disproportionately large. And in a small country, if you again look at Helsinki and 2 or 3 other cities, that represents by overwhelmingly the economy of the country. It may be right, it may be wrong, but it is what it is. Getting cities right is critically important. Helsinki, to your point, it's like you can't be in isolation anymore. This is a global economy,
right?
And Helsinki, as a city, let's say the larger Helsinki region is 1 million people. You're in competition with cities all over the planet that are of equal size. It's not just you're competing with Stockholm or you're competing with you're not. You're competing with any city in your size range. anywhere on the planet.
And you're competing whether you know it or not.
Whether you like it or not,
Yeah.
you're competing, right? You can't say, well, we're Helsinki. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
You can take that position, but it's going to ultimately hurt you every day, and you'll fall farther behind. So you are thrust. The world is thrust into this giant international web of competition. So the city has to maintain a position to be as forward-thinking and as creative as the cities against which it competes.
Do you think there might be still, in spite of all of this, at some point a trend of like de-urbanization? With if we update our transport system to autonomous cars, hyperloops, or whatever, can we spread out again and live and populate the country more evenly and live at the cottage or whatever we want to do?
The answer to that is mostly no. There's a little bit of yes in that, but it's mostly no. And the reason is that it's not merely getting to where you're going, right? And it's not merely being able to buy the stuff. Where are the schools? Where are the stores? Where are the restaurants? Where are the hospitals? Where are the services that you need to live today? And they are increasingly concentrated in the urban areas. It's very expensive to open a hospital out in the countryside to service 30,000 people. It's plus then you have the choice of the population. Millennials, you say the 35 and under set, if you will, they choose to be in urban environments because that's where their friends are, that's where their peers are, that's where stuff is happening. They want to go down to the coffee shop and hang with their buds. They want to go to some restaurant and hang out. It's not about being off on the farm by yourself. Sure, it's great to have
with the pigs.
Well, you mean it's great to have the
fun
American and go away and take some time off, but that's not where you want to live,
Right.
And this is a global trend. So yes, certainly you could say, well, gee, with remote computing and high speed and streaming and all this kind of stuff, you should be able to live anywhere you want and do work from anywhere you want. And that's true. But what do people want? Yeah. They want to be in the city. So, I'm not going to worry about the zombie apocalypse or, the end of the world where people are fleeing to the countryside for safety. I can't worry about that stuff. In the world structure the way it is today, the city is the 21st century's most likely the century of the city, and therefore getting it right at the city level is really important.
Yeah.
And I guess it's right that humans only ruin one spot, one concentrated spot. Let's not spread out the ruining of nature further than
let's
we
save
need
something
to.
else to ruin,
Right.
or then figure out how to do the teleporter. I'm waiting for that. That would be the greatest
We're on
thing.
some other planet.
Right. Were you going to say something?
No, just about the teleporter.
About the
I think that
okay.
was very important.
That was important.
We got the teleporter point in. Okay, it's been a great podcast. We're out of here.
A few more minutes I think we have still in this episode. We can still continue talking about Helsinki. That's interesting. What are some of the strengths of Helsinki globally? Not for Helsinkians themselves. But what attracts people to Helsinki? What would attract people to Helsinki?
Well, what will attract people to Helsinki for sure is
Bruno.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. Exactly. Run it by absolutely. It's on the water. We like to be on the water. We come from the water.
Yeah.
Where the great cities around the planet are pretty much all on the water. There's some exceptions, but they all like to have a whole connected to the water. And certainly Helsinki is connected to the water very, very closely. It's unusual in the sense that it is very urban in some ways. At the same time, it's also closely connected to nature. And that's a big advantage as well. The proximity of the parks, how many parks there are actually interwoven into the city. Another feature is, of course, it's clean, it's safe, it's well organized. Those are also good things. And then you have a larger global reality, and that is climate change. Whether you like it or you don't like it, whether you want to blame it on man or call it just Mother Nature, it doesn't matter. No one can deny that it's happening.
Yeah.
And what that means is that places that are more southerly are going to be more difficult to live in. They're going to be countries, they're going to be certainly cities where they run out of water, where it's too damn hot, it's too dry, and there's going to be, therefore, a pull from countries that have water, such as Finland, cities that have water, Helsinki, cities where the climate, even Helsinki will be less snow, unfortunately, but it's going to be livable. When the temperatures reach 40, 45 degrees in some cities, it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
And So those are all, from a Megatrans standpoint, Helsinki has a huge amount of its fundamentals aligned in the right direction.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Al Gore talks a lot about these climate refugees, and I think it's going to be just an immense problem. And looking at what we have now, where we have this discussion about immigration and people fleeing their country, it's nothing.
Yeah, but let's not. God, you just get overwhelmed by bad news. So let's talk about the good news piece here, right? Forget about the term refugee brings with it all this sense of people coming in feet wrapped in rags and dragging one suitcase kind of thing. No, what you're going to have are entrepreneurs, people who are looking to create businesses and raise families, people who are coming with all of the assets that you want them to have, good education, a commitment to the right social values.
That's what
outsider
we need
perspective
as a
maybe?
country as well. Yeah, we absolutely need more.
And then I'm not speaking badly. I mean, there are people you need. That's always going to be true. But instead of seeing this as the onslaught of those who are fleeing in poverty and ignorance, there are also the opportunity for people who are creatives, people who make jobs, who help the cities grow in a positive way, can help pay for the needs of those who don't have.
Right.
And why would I go to?
Exactly.
I can choose to come here.
Yeah, and I think the refugee problems and the crisis, they need to be fixed on site. We aren't able to. It's no way there's 100 million people moving and we can just make it work. It's not going to happen. We need to stop it.
Well,
in some way, like the climate change.
That'd be the
itself.
ideal, obviously. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the only way.
Fixing on site is these are problems of a major, and we're not going to solve them in any podcast.
Right.
But I think in terms of the city of Helsinki, it can be a magnet for creatives, inventors, entrepreneurs, people who build society, people who build the economy, people who add insights and value in every aspect of Finnish society. And so, you want to know why I stay, and I'm very optimistic about that. I think that's great. And there'll be challenges, but I can't focus on those. I got to focus on what's working.
Yeah,
right.
Like that. And that's been the overall mindset of the podcast this season. It was quite negative last year, but it's...
Yeah. Well, but also that's sort of the American, right? We're just sort of, just go for it, right? We're going forward, right? The future's coming whether you like it or not. The question is how, you can sit around going, oh, God, this problem and that problem, the next problem, it's, refugees, it's this, it's that, it's a terrible, put up a wall, block, that's the whole, build a wall to Mexico. Really? How incredibly stupid is that? That's just as dumb as Germany banning Uber, right? It's just another version of that same sense of I can put a wall up to keep out the future. I can keep out reality.
Yeah. Yeah, the future is coming whether you like it or not.
Yeah. And the fact is you can like it because there's a lot of good stuff. If you reach for the good stuff and that's your program, then you're going to do the good stuff.
Yeah.
If your focus is oh my God, there's a shitstorm coming and we got to protect ourselves. Well, wait a minute. That you don't build the future by worrying about the challenges. You build the future by hoping that the challenges themselves, as you create the future, some of those challenges will dissolve. They'll disappear because they no longer are challenges.
Yes, and it comes back to what you said in the beginning about the stories. And this is not to say that there aren't real problems and real plights, but a lot of it is what story you tell about your circumstances.
Well, it's also it is partly story, but it's also so let's look backwards to find maybe it's a good point to finish up here. But
yes,
let me give you an example. In 1900. It's one of my favorites. In 1900, New York City was perhaps the fastest growing city on the planet. And in 1900, there were 100,000 horses in New York City, which meant there were 1,200 metric tons of horse manure every day on the streets, 100,000 liters of horse urine, and on average, 40 horses died a day in the street, and they didn't have the equipment to get rid of them. The city planners were terrified because at the rate of growth, they thought that New York would soon have 1 million horses. They didn't have enough stables. They didn't have enough hay. They thought they'd be overwhelmed with horse shit, literally. And they're panicking about the problem. Of course, what they weren't thinking about was that 20 years before, the automobile had been invented.
Yeah.
And so while the city planners and all the people were going, oh, my God, we've got to stop the growth. The horses are going to overwhelm us, right? That's 1900. By 1910, it's all cars. The horses are gone. They literally are gone in a decade. Right. And the city planners were worried about 1 million of them. So that's a simplified version, but it's the same thing. You stop worrying about today's problem, invent the future, and then all of a sudden the set of opportunities and the challenges change entirely.
Last question. It's the one we ask all our guests, so you get to answer this as well. You did well enough.
Sweet.
Yeah. So we've been asking all our guests for one big dream for Finland or for the world, something that they like to see happen.
God. Well, let's keep it local. Let's talk about Finland. I would really like to see Finland step into the sunshine. There's so much potential here. There's so many good things. There's so many unique things about Finland that are very difficult to replicate elsewhere. And at some point, I really would hope that Finland would see, instead of telling itself that this is a bad place to be, would really tell itself that it's a great place to be. And instead of telling itself we can't do that, realize that you can do that. And when that shift, when that mindset flips over, right, then Finland's going to do fantastic. There'll be plenty of jobs. There'll be plenty of opportunities. It's a wonderful place. And this is all a question of story. You're telling yourself the wrong story. Time to tell yourself the right story.
Hell yeah. That's
Hell
it.
yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. Kiitti kaikille kuuntelijoille, yhteistyökumppaneille ja Futucastin koko tiimille. Isa Kraution ja William von der Baalinin lisäksi, Isa Kraution minä, tiimiin kuuluu tuotantovastaava Samuel Happonen ja media vastaava Tuumas Lundström. Ja kiitos Niko Noanalle tästä upeasta tunnaribiisistä, joka on mukana Lululandissa. Seuratkaa mitä somessa nimimerkillä Futucast, millä tahansa podcast-alustalla ja saa arvostella. Mielellään. Thanks. Moi moi.